Hey everyone, it's Ten Types, and I was looking at Limitless the other day, and I noticed something interesting. This interesting deck by it says subscribe to Ten Types on YouTube. So that's some good advice. So if you're looking for any life-changing advice, that's some good advice. But no, in all seriousness, I played in a tournament. The tournament itself was a little bit messy, but I ended up doing pretty well. I should say the deck performed well. I didn't perform. I made some misplays, but yeah, with this control list. And I'm going to be telling you how to play the deck and how to deal with the different matchups. I'm going to be looking at the metagame and telling you how to deal with these top 10 decks here, Giratina through, and telling you all the decks above, all the decks above other here. So first of all, the general idea of the deck here is going to be I should probably pull it up like this. You have Kirlia and Rotom. Kirlia draws cards, and Rotom also draws cards. They're very important in certain matchups. Some of them don't work super well. And matchups where they can very easily carry your bench Pokemon, Kirlia isn't too good in matchups where they turn off your ability of Rotom. Rotom won't work as well, but generally you're trying to set those two up to work as your draw engine. I'm also mainly going to go over the Pokemon. Most of the trainers I'd say are kind of straightforwards, like Switch is there to switch and just don't have a ball to grab stuff out of the prizes. You got search, recovery, and then a few of the trainers are more matchup specific. So I'll go over those when I need to. But like Iono's here, obviously just to it's disruption and draw. It's just a good card. And then as you see, this is a bit of a more concise list than some of the other lists I've made in the past. The other inclusion you could add to this list, which could be really nice, which I have had at some points, but have actually cut, is going to be a Flying Pikachu VMAX line, which while it's basics, it is useful in a few matchups. These are matchups that I don't see all the time, so I've kind of not worried about too much, but I will talk about them when they show up. So and as a subscribe, if you enjoy this, I will be releasing more content like this, um, probably in the future. And no, I certainly will be playing more Control. But I hope you enjoy this. And as I said, check out my other videos where I play this deck in very similar lists, because you'll learn a lot about Control. And also, if you're playing against Control, I'll give you a few tips on what to do in this game too, because obviously you just want to not fall into Control's trap. So first of all, Lost Box Giratina. This is probably a slightly unfavored matchup for you, but it's not like the worst matchup in the world. I'd say it's probably like 35% win rate, maybe 40. It's not like great, but it's acceptable. And obviously, Lost Box has a few different routes, a bunch of different attackers. There's the Giratina, which one-shots everything, and then there's Radiant Greninja, Manaphy, Sableye. Radiant Greninja, Cramorant, Sableye. They could attack with Manphy or Comfy, but that won't be too good. And then also this one's a lot of Switch. So Switch is like bad for you because you can't really trap stuff. So I essentially never try to trap stuff because that won't work. But what you want to do is wall. So the main idea of this, my control list, is to wall. Sometimes it's to trap. Sometimes it's to run them out of energies. But in this matchup, it will be to wall against Giratina V or to remove energies against Giratina V Star. You will want to use Buffalan. Buffalan here is a very powerful card or it's a decently powerful card that discard or lost one's energy attached to points active for 3 energy. And then you want a lost one energy attached to Giratina V-Star, which also lost zones when it attacks. And then keep in mind, Bouffalant, it won't be as good against Giratina V here. You have a few tips to get around, tricks to get around Giratina V. But if they instead of going with Giratina attack like Cramorant, which literally attacks for free, then you need to go a bit of a different route, and you want to go with Regieleki here. Regieleki has its first attack that recovers a trainer from your discard pile into your hand. And then it has 130 HP, which will be one-shotted by Giratina V, which is bad. So in order to get around that, you will want to put a Bravery Charm on Regieleki, and then you can loop it with Penny. Penny scoops up the Regieleki and the Bravery Charm, and then you can switch between the two Regielekis. And then same thing against with Sableye. Sableye will only be hitting 120, so you should be okay here. Um, Yeah, and then you also have that's about it in this matchup. You want to either go in with Buffon against the Giratina or against the other attackers. You want to go in with Regieleki. It can be a little awkward to set up at times, but generally I think it's pretty decent, and I've found that this matchup's okay. And this is definitely the best way to attack for it with the Regieleki Buffon, I think. That's one of the hard, to me initially that was a harder matchup, but then as I learned it more, it became pretty easy. Next up, we have Charizard, and I'm just going to be looking at the top list here for all the decks, I think. Charizard here obviously has Charizard EX, Pidgeot EX, Arceus V-Star than Radiant Greninja. Radiant Greninja is a little bit scary, but um, I don't know, just don't worry about it too much. Honestly, I don't really see it played down too much. And it can attack back-to-back turns, and it needs certain conditions to be met. And likely your opponent will kind of struggle with that. But the main idea here, you actually have two different routes you can go down. One which will deal with Radiant Charizard very effectively, and one which is easier to set up. So you have Walls, you have Alolan Vulpix V-Star, which walls Pokemon with abilities. That's pretty much everything in the whole deck here. That's very good. It does not wall Arceus V, does not wall Charmeleon, and if they run Path, that can be bad. So if you're suspecting they may be going with Path, don't use Alolan Vulpix V-Star, but really, if they are running Path, you're a little bit nervous anyways, because your other route is going to be Mimikyu, which walls EXs and Vs, which is Charizard, Arceus, and Pidgeot. Keep in mind, this is not wall Charmeleon. So Mimikyu has 30 HP, it does 70 HP, it does 70 as well. But then you have, so they will KO you, but Charmeleon here does 70 to you, but then 20 to itself. So if you hit them after the attack, they will get KO'd, and you can survive an attack here using Pot Helmet, and Pot Helmet is going to be able to just allow you to survive an attack. Same thing with Bravery Charm. Both of those cards will work on Mimikyu to trade positively with Charmeleon. And the Mimikyu will just get killed by Radiant Charizard, so you need to keep that in mind. You can just recover the Mimikyu, swing back at Radiant Charizard, but you're actually going to have to 3-shot Radiant Charizard with Mimikyu, which can be a bit awkward. You might want to sneak an attack with, say, Mawile. Actually, no, Mawile won't do it, but like Ralts, Mawile. You could hit it with like Mawile and then hit it with Ralts. Mawile, for those of you who don't know, here, I'll just pull it up. Has its first attack, which is essentially the only one you're going to be using with this deck. I suppose you could use Tempting Trap into Bite, but Tempting Trap here does stops him from retreating, and then you will hit 90 more with regular damage next turn. Keep in mind, this will not buff the damage of Mimikyu because that hits damage counters, but it will buff the damage of other things. So yeah, you can do certain things about Radiant Charizard, and obviously they only run one of that. They could recover it, but I don't know. You just need to I'm probably going with the Alolan Vulpix V-Star if you can set that up, and that'll make the matchup pretty straightforward. And honestly, I think Charizard's a very favorable matchup for this deck, probably like 70 or 80% win rate. And another very easy matchup here is going to be Gardevoir. Things can go wrong. This list is a very straightforward list, surprisingly straightforward. This actually, you should probably not be losing to this list very often. But yeah, you have your main strategy is going to trap Radiant Greninja or Manaphy the active. Keep in mind that Gardevoir lists very rarely run switch cards. So switch here is going to be a very or not, the lack of switch is going to be a very important tool for a control player. Of course, if you are playing Gardevoir, don't bench these. Most of the time, my opponents do. If they don't, you can bring them into play with Manaphy, which drags it from their hand into play, or Echoing Horn. Manaphy using its attack drags the basic into play, or Echoing Horn to drag a basic from the discard into play. Because they can't attack with Manaphy or Radiant Greninja. Keep in mind you could do the same thing with Mew, because you can trap Mew and then stick Pot Helmet, so their 30 damage is going to be reduced down to 0. That is a strategy you can do. A number of Gardevoir lists do run Lost Vacuum, though, which will mean that trapping Mew will not be a valid plan. So pretty much if you're a Gardy player, you want to get all your Pokemon into play, but then you can't get Pokemon Energy on all your Pokemon necessarily. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, yeah, but you just want to trap something. You can also wall with Alolan Vulpix V-Star. As I said, walls Pokemon with abilities. They can attack with Cresselia, but that's it. Certain lists run Spiritomb. That's not Spiritomb, but if they ran Spiritomb to turn off basic V abilities, they can hit your Alolan Vulpix with Zacian, but also they can turn off your Rotom, which is not good for you. And then also sometimes they play this other Ralts, which not in this list again, but is like a loose counter to Alolan Vulpix V-Star, as it stops Alolan Vulpix V-Star from attacking for a turn. Unless you're able to do a double switch to remove that effect, which is a bit awkward to do. But in this very straightforward list, it's like super easy for control to win. Just get a Radiant Greninja or Manaphy into play and get it stuck. They could collapse Stadium it away if it's on the bench, but generally it's going to be a little awkward. You want to obviously boss it as soon as you can, and then Mawile trap it. And yeah, that's a pretty straightforward matchup. Next, regular Lost Zone. Same thing as Lost Zone Giratina. This matchup's actually pretty not good, but I don't see this deck very much. Incidentally, this first list runs Pidgeot, which gives their deck infinite loop, which is kind of bad. I mean, you can't ever trap something because they'll just loop Pidgeot forever, and then you'll deck out or timeout. You could actually time out. I'm also assuming you're not playing like in tournament. I'm assuming you're playing with Live's timer, but you would probably time out, or you might time out in that scenario if you try to boss something and they have Pidgeot V gives you an infinite deck. Um, but yeah, you see Dragonite instead of Giratina here. Um, and then they have, I mean, it's like a bit of a weird deck. Sometimes you could like run out of Switch, and that's something, but you don't know necessarily exactly how many they run. They could always get unlucky if they play Pokestop. They could just get unlucky with that. Um, but for the most part, what you want to do is against the the Sableye and the Radiant Greninja and Kermit, you want to set up your Lucky to loop that, and then against Dragonite or Pidgeot. I don't actually know what you do against Pidgeot. You probably um, I don't know. I've never actually played against Lost Zone deck with Pidgeot with control. I've like never I've seen it, but I haven't really been attacked by it. But it's not a huge deal. But against like Dragonite, you try to remove their energies. It's going to be a bit of an awkward process. This is the matchup where Flying Pikachu is pretty good here. But Sableye can also get through Flying Pikachu, so you could play Flying Pikachu plus Lost City, which would give you a very powerful match, or a pretty solid matchup here, but will reduce your consistency. That's why I cut it. But for the most part, you just want to go with um, Lucky and Buffon again here. Sometimes you might have to kind of wing it, trap some stuff, and hope for the best. But it's like I see this matchup's probably like 20 or 30%. It's not a great matchup, but it's winnable sometimes, especially if both players play well. It's a pretty bad matchup, but a lot of people don't know super well how to play against control, so there's a chance you can just win it. And I don't know exactly, I don't know all the ins and outs of the matchup, but generally you don't want to like burn out your switches in general against control. Don't do that. Chien-Pao Excalibur, another awkward matchup, but a very winnable matchup as well. There are a lot of different builds of Chien-Pao Excalibur as well, so notably, depending on the Frigibax you play, actually, it can change things a lot. There's a Frigibax that is it gets more it like does more damage, which is kind of funny. But then Palkia V actually hits through Alolan Vulpix V-Star. So the main thing you're going to do again is wall with Alolan Vulpix V-Star against the ability mons, which is all of them. Essentially, there's Arceus, there's Frigibax, there's Palkia V, and that's about it. There are a few others that are occasionally played, but they're not too common. So you have Alolan Vulpix V-Star, super good in this matchup, and then you can also kind of like I don't know, you kind of like in the early game before you get the Lone Vulpix V-Star set, you need to kind of stall using Mimikyus and like Mawilds, but that's kind of sketchy because List plays FU Switch and also will play Bexcalibur, which hits through Mimikyu no matter what you do. So, yeah, but you're looking to set up Lone Vulpix V-Star. I see this matchup sketchy because, in my opinion, Chien-Pao's whenever I play against it, it's usually pretty consistent, and they have the potential to essentially double gust you or switch you out and then switch you back in, which will allow them to KO your Chien-Pao, or not your Chien-Pao, your Alolan Vulpix with their Chien-Pao. Because if you switch Alolan Vulpix out and then back in, its effect will be removed, and it will not be immune anymore. That being said, I don't know. I think this matchup's all right. It's probably like 40 to 50, which isn't too bad. I'd say just keep in mind, I've added more stuff to support Alolan Vulpix. I added a 2-2, 2 waters, 3 double turbo. It does play 2 Raihan. It also plays a Thornton, whereas Thornton, which just kind of allow you to get your Alolan Vulpix into play easier, as that is this is a very difficult matchup to play, but it's not necessarily like an awful matchup. Miranda and Flaffy, another pretty solid matchup here. And yeah, so this is a bit of an unusual list. Flying Pikachu V is not a conventional card. Not that Flying Pikachu V causes problems for you. It's actually good, but a lot of lists run Zeraora, not all lists run Zapdos. And a lot of lists run Path. In this particular matchup against this specific list, it could. I mean, there's always a Alolan Vulpix V-Star, which isn't a great option because Raichu V in this matchup, Flying Pikachu V will hit you, and that's not great. But you could stall some with that. But the main idea here is going to be there's two ideas. You can either one stall with Mimikyu to wall the EXs and Vs. This does not wall Zapdos, and this does not wall Zeraora. Imagine this was Zeraora, it would not wall that. And actually, interestingly, I should talk about Mew-EX now. Mew-EX will actually be able to hit through Mimikyu as well. That card's not out yet, but that'll definitely see play in this deck and probably some other decks. So I haven't thought too much about 151, but keep that in mind. And then you could also trap something. They do run some switch, but there is the option to trap if they play irresponsibly. You could trap Flaffies, as a lot of times they run a lot of switch card. This list literally runs only one switch out of Flaffy. Of course, they can attack with Flaffy eventually, but that's committing a lot of energy, and they can't get that back. So there's a lot of intricacies with this matchup. But you just want to wall Mimikyu for the most part. I say it's complicated, but for you, you just want to Mimikyu, maybe Mawile, um, and that's about it. So you want to recover Mimikyu as well with like Thornton and Super Rod. And then you do have two Psychics. A lot of lists only run one, but I've chosen to play two because Mimikyu can be very important. There's certain things you can do with Drapion as well. You can try to trap that. It does have four attack cost. Assuming you don't play, does this list? No, yeah, this list doesn't run any Battle Styles Pokemon. So yeah, you want to just trap Drapion in the active. Sometimes that's like a valid strategy because it will allow you to, and just go ahead and like slow them down some. Um, it's you play decently accurately, but it's not like impossible. Oh, you can trap Squawkabilly as well. I forgot. Some lists play this. A lot of lists play it, and you can trap that decently well because well, I mean they can switch out, but once they're out of switch, this is a Pokemon you can trap because it will not be doing enough damage to get through a Pot Helmet, which reduces damage by 30. They only hit 20. Oh, and then also when they play down Zapdos before they get it powered up, assuming they don't like get very like lucky off an electric generator, you want to boss it and like just trade as best as you can. Target down Zapdos, and then Zeraora, and then Flaffy, and you should be able to win the matchup decently easily. It's definitely a favorite matchup. Then Fusion Mew. Honestly, I haven't played against this too much. I originally I had like a lot of text, and I started cutting text, so I never played against it. I never saw it, and so I don't know if I've like really ever played against it at all. But theoretically, this Fusion Mew is a very easy deck to beat. This particular list runs 3 switch. So against this deck, they run a lot of special energy. Going with the Yveltal, and just remove their special energy. You could also go in some. I previously had a Flannery in this list that would also be pretty okay in this matchup. And then you also want to just go for boss trapping Genesect, as that will be annoying for them, and they will probably not be able to attack with Genesect. Theoretically, they could. I don't think I've ever seen a Mew VMAX player attack with Genesect in a control matchup, because you probably have removed some of their energy or they've committed somewhere else or something like that. So you can trap Genesect. That's a very real strategy and a pretty solid one. And be careful of Lost City, of them lost zoning something important to you, like say Mawile, or this list does run you 2 Yveltal, but if they lost a Mawile, that's kind of bad. Oh, you do have Boufflant as well to remove an energy, and that is a thing. It's not necessarily an amazing thing, but it's a thing you can do. But all in all, I think this matchup's pretty all right. Also, there's Excelgor. I haven't really thought about Excelgor, to be honest. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't really know how this affects the matchup because that's like a newer tech, and I wasn't really building my list towards that for that. But I don't think it causes too many problems because it's a bit of an awkward Pokemon to use. So all in all, I think Mew's a favored matchup. It's not like the best matchup, but it's probably like I'd say it's like 60, maybe 70% win rate, something like that. No Single Strike Lugia. Single Strike Lugia, I guess, is bad. I haven't really played against this deck too much with control again, which, yeah, as you can see, there are some issues with the list. Because really, in testing, I pretty much only played against these top 6 decks. I played a lot of games in ladder with it and pretty much just saw those. And a lot of these are very solid matchups, and that's about it. And occasionally some weird Arceus deck. And Lugia Archeops is a sketchy matchup. I'll say that. What you want to try to do is, I guess, Swallow and Vulpix, or you can Mawile trap something. Yeah, I suppose these lists don't run Jet Energy, so you could Mawile trap Squawkabilly, and that would probably be a strat, or Pumpkaboo, or Radiant Starmina. Actually, Radiant Starmina would probably be the best because they can't attack with it. Some lists run Penny, some lists run Sharon's Care, which might not matter, but it theoretically could. But yeah, you want to boss trap something. I guess a lot of lists run Jet Energy though. Obviously, colorless Lugia lists run Jet Energy, but Single Strike Lugia sometimes also runs Jet Energy. I think they often do, so you want to keep that in mind. Mimikyu is not quite an amazing wall because they have Archeops, Stonjourner, and Yveltal. but you could cause them to like commit all their energies in some weird place and run out of energies, which is a strategy. You can also try to run them out of energies with your Vaultal. That's a very that's probably a very solid route as well. It depends on how you draw and how the matchup goes and stuff like that. I think all in all, against Single Strike Lugia, I mean, if you want to win, you should probably play the Flying Pikachu. Again, that's very nice in this matchup. It's not an auto win, but it's pretty good if you play Flying Pikachu. And can pull it off consistently. But right now, I think you want to kind of go for like Boss Trap, and then with regular colors Lugia, I'll mention that as well. Especially as I like all Blitzel, I'm a fan of his. And he plays a lot of colors Lugia, and in this matchup, you just go you literally just go Lone Vulpix and you should be able to win it. It's a much easier matchup, I think. I don't know the ins and outs of the deck, but you can trap stuff as well. And then you all like Radiant Charizard, you could trap. But then next we got Arceus Giratina. Honestly, this matchup is a weird matchup as well. This is kind of the way you approach most Arceus matchups as well. You have a few different walls. You have Mimikyu, but you want to keep in mind that Giratina V can hit through Mimikyu. So if your opponent's playing well, they will not put Giratina, they will not evolve the V into the V Star, but they very well might, which is a misplay. So Giratina V is going to cause problems for Mimikyu, but that's about it. So if they aren't careful, then you can go in with that. And then Bibarel also can. So Bibarel's a little funny here. Theoretically, you can tank a hit with the Bravery Charm as well, but Bibarel is like coin flip based. A lot of times they'll have double turbo, which means that if they have a double turbo and you have a Pot Helmet on, you will be living one attack with Mimikyu just on a coin flip. So it's actually like a luck-based matchup, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, this is kind of a sketchy matchup. You want to trap something, but like you want to probably trap Skwovet if you can, because Skwovet is gonna very much struggle to like can't really attack like at all. It kind of can, but then the list does play switches. So list runs 3. I think most run 2. I don't know how common Jet is in the list. Maybe it's more common than I think, but usually they run like a switch and a rope. And then, like, so it's not super easy to boss stall, especially when they, like, Iono and Judge Path you. Mostly Judge Path, you won't be taking too many prizes. But Judge Path will be annoying because it shuts off your Rotom. So this matchup, there are definitely times you can go with Mimikyu if they don't play super optimally, though. So I'd say this matchup's maybe, like, 40 to 50. It's not, I may probably, like, closer just to 40. Oops. But, yeah, so I'd say this matchup's pretty winnable. You just need to play better than your opponent, really, which is kind of a silly thing to say, but it is true. In this match, and then Italian Urshifu, last match deck here we're gonna go over. Really, I'm not exactly sure how to go about this matchup, but it's kind of weird because they have like Tower Waters, which is free retreat, but it's not switch. They have like a bit of a variety of Pokemon. They have the pings from Inteleon, and they have spread, which is not really something that list is prepared for, as it doesn't run the bench barrier or Manaphy, but it does have some interesting routes. The one route here is going to be Mimikyu. Mimikyu to wall off Inteleon and Urshifu. They can attack with Octillery and can also attack with Medicham to do 20. And they also have Inteleon VMAX and Radiant Alakazam to like move damage around and get damage on you, which is going to be kind of awkward. Luckily, they will run out of energy at some point, so it's not the end of the world. And then they also have Rapid Strike Energy here, and Rapid Strike Energy is going to, obviously it's a special energy. When they attack with Inteleon, it goes back to their hand. But you can, like, if they attach it to Octillery, which they might to try to get through your Mimikyu, you can then remove it with Yveltal, or Flannery, but I don't play Flannery in this list. So, yeah, it's kind of it's a very strange matchup, but you want a wall. You could trap as well. So if they play Squawkabilly, you can trap Squawkabilly. That's a pretty solid route. Again, you will need the Pot Helmet on Mawile so you can live. So you can also trap Radiant Alakazam though. Trapping Radiant Alakazam is a pretty solid route. So this is probably one of the trickiest matchups in my opinion, but it's a very fun matchup. Honestly, on both sides of the board, I played Inteleon. I used to play a lot of Inteleon Urshifu, and I played against Control some, and it was pretty fun. It's a very interesting matchup. I know there are a lot of people who don't like playing against Control, but we know what Control does. It can be much more enjoyable to play against, and you get some really interesting interactions. But yeah, I think Overall, I'd say control is favored, but you need precise. It's a matchup where playing the person who plays better will probably win, and of course, there's always going to be some luck. But I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. Most of these other decks are you kind of do the same ideas here, um, and so they're decently straightforward. It's about as straightforward as the other ones. But I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. I think the list is pretty good. As I talked about, Flying Pikachu could be a nice inclusion. There also is Ice Cube. Ice Cube isn't anywhere near as good, but it's a one card tech. You could put that in. It will help a few matchups a little bit, but it's not that good of a card. But then Flying Pikachu, a lot of card slots probably. I mean, it's at minimum 3 because you need the V Max, and the Lightning Energy, but probably more. Probably like 4, anywhere from like 4 to 6 card slots dedicated to that new attacker. So I'm interested in hearing if you think that's worth it. And the other things you want to learn about, like what if they're worth teching in. One thing I'll say is against Lost Zone, that's a matchup I've like messed around with a lot. I put in a Empoleon V at one point. It did not work out too well because I just found like I'm not gonna be able to set up before them. Um, and they have Colress, and then they have like Rope and Boss, and by turn 4 they'll certainly have like enough cards in Lost Zone to start annoying me, even with Empoleon V. So you could put like Klefki. I wouldn't put Klefki in here, but Klefki turns off Rotom as well. So that's why you don't want it here. But overall, I think the deck's a very fun deck to play. And I think if you know what you're doing and if you learn about matchups, you can enjoy playing against control as well. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I actually re-recorded this as well because I had some issues recording it the first time. So I hope you enjoy this. I think it's a good video, but if you don't think so, feel free to dislike the video as well. That's like versus dislike is decent feedback. Honestly, a lot of the time, like there are certainly some people who just don't enjoy the video and then dislike it, which is what you should do. If you enjoy it, you like it. And if you're like whatever, you just don't do anything, which is fine. And then but a lot of times dislikes are like people are like annoyed, like having a bad day. And if you're having a bad day, I hope I'm making your day better. But I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, if you enjoyed, subscribe, and I'm excited to see you next time.